this is new legislation currently going through pre-legislative scrutiny in the Oireachtas Joint Committee on Health and Children. And over these number of weeks, we have been meeting with representatives of different interest groups, non-governmental organisations, bodies who have had a direct involvement in the whole area of adoption, and most importantly of all, people who have been through the adoptive experience. And that would include mothers whose child was taken up for adoption, and adopted children whose experience was, through the greater part of their lives, growing up in a family with adoptive parents. So you have a variety of experiences reflected. But among all of the different groups that have come before us, and last Thursday, very particularly, a voice there representative of an organisation called First Mothers, and Cathy McMahon came before the Joint Oireachtas Committee, and it would have been viewed, and I know from speaking with colleagues since last Thursday, that it was one of the most passionate and one of the most intense and impressive contributions to date. And, you know, what Cathy has put on the record is, you know, her abiding memory of the experience as a young girl and her child being taken from her. And these are her words. You know, the abiding memory of, you know, her time in a so-called mother and baby home, of other women, you know, their anguish, screaming, as she referred to, screaming in anguish following the often forced removal of their babies, and the wish, the great strong bond on the immediacy of birth of the young woman, of the young mother, to hold and to retain that child in her arms. This was, as I've said, a very passionate contribution, and it's one that struck a chord with political voices right across the board. And I have no doubt that from my own knowledge and experience of meeting women within our own constituency of Cavan and Monaghan who have been through this exact experience, that Cathy was indeed speaking truthfully and reflecting honestly on the experience of the overwhelming number of women who have been through this quite tragic period within their lives, being left, coming back home to their own community place, but without the child that they would miss and yearn to hold, yearn to meet for the rest of their lives.
Many people, when they think of adoption, Deputy Caoláin, think of a person making a choice to give up their child, whether it be a boy or a girl, you know, for various different reasons. But as you mentioned quite rightly there, these were in many cases forced adoptions.
Absolutely.
This woman, Cathy, that spoke on behalf of so many women out there last week, she spoke in the context of this bill, the Information and Traceability Bill, Tracing Bill. How will that improve their situation at the moment? Because they are actively tracing their children, which they were forced to give up at the moment. Well,
First Mothers and many other voices from across the interested parties that have come before the Oireachtas Joint Committee would argue strenuously for the right of an adopted child to full disclosure of information in relation to their natural birth parents, and very particularly their natural birth mother. But, you know, without question, both parents, if the information were recorded, were available. There's a whole variety of reasons why that should be the case. And there is this notion that, you know, confidentiality and, we don't want to upset or whatever it might be. But, you know, it could have a variety of important impacts in terms of the life of that child going into the future. It could be because of congenital health conditions. It could be any number of areas that might present in that child's life that was a part of the lives of she or her's natural parents. And there is a powerful argument for that. And there is also a powerful argument, as Cathy made very, very clear on Thursday, that very, very few, if any, she even questioned if any were actually willingly giving up their child. This notion that women were willingly giving up their child for adoption, she believes, she certainly records that was her position, that she was coerced, coerced into, the setting that she was placed, be it a convent of the time, be it one of the mother and baby homes, be it in whatever circumstance, that she was coerced during pregnancy and coerced during birth. And, she feels that is in fact the real story of the greatest number of those young mothers, that they were not willing participants in what took place. They were forced into a situation and their child forcibly taken from them. We want to see all of that confined to the sad pages of history in this country. We need to see legislation in place that will open up a clear pathway for adopted children, for those mothers who have been in the past historically forced to give up their child, to be able to reach out and to open up that critical pathway of contact. And many of them are, and it's not only the adopted child, but many of the mothers that I've met myself from within the Northern Sound listenership area, have taken those critical, bold and brave steps to make that first approach. And, whatever stonewalling there is in relation to the release of information, whatever traceability needs have to be met, it's high time that societally we recognised that there is a right for mother and child to know each other in their respective lifetimes.
Okay. What kind of timescale are we looking at for this legislation, this bill now?
Well, I would have hoped that it would all go through before the general election. That awaits to be seen in terms of the legislative backlog that's currently presenting. However, I think that while there are areas that need to be revisited, that there's fine-tuning and for the work to be done, I would hope that this is a bill that might yet make its passage through successfully. That would be my earnest hope, and I would hope that it would be fit for purpose, and that we would once and for all address the very traumatic issues, the very disturbing issues that have been ignored or covered over in the past. And I mean, it's only in the past 24 hours, Julianne, that we've heard on our national airways in relation to, some of these so-called mother and baby homes where recorded numbers of deaths in terms of the register of these institutions does not match up with the recorded deaths notified to the respective local offices of the local authority or the registrar of births, deaths, etc. And there is a big question out there. How could there be such discrepancies? Is this another area where a light needs to be shone? And the view very much offered in terms of national media speculation is that the discrepancy represents a number of children who hadn't died at all, but were actually placed for adoption, perhaps even sold into adoptive circumstances, either here in Ireland or overseas, by the overseers, religious institutions, religious orders, as the case has been in a number of these. And, this is further information about the very sad and dark days of attitudes in Ireland that must never, ever be allowed to represent in our lifetime or at any time in the future.